The dusty wagon rolled into Randsburg, California on a blistering afternoon in July of 1898, carrying nothing but a young woman, a bitter letter, and the sharp sting of family disgrace. Penelope Andrews sat rigid on the wooden bench, her dark hair plastered to her neck with sweat, her green eyes fixed on the barren landscape that would become her prison. She was 22 years old, educated at a fine school in Boston, and according to her father's furious declaration, she had brought shame upon their distinguished family by rejecting her third suitor in as many years. The final straw had been when she publicly refused the mayor's son at a summer social, stating clearly that she would not marry a man who treated his horse better than he treated the household staff. Her father, Cyrus Andrews, a wealthy shipping magnate, had decided that his headstrong daughter needed to learn humility and obedience. His sister, Penelope's Aunt Martha, ran a small boarding house in Randsburg, a mining town that had seen better days. The letter he sent ahead was explicit. Penelope was to work for her keep, to be given the hardest tasks, and to receive no special treatment. She was to be broken of her pride and independence, taught to appreciate the comfortable life she had spurned. The wagon driver, an elderly man who had been paid handsomely for his silence during the 3-day journey, finally spoke as they approached a weather-beaten building with a faded sign reading Martha's boarding house. "This is it, miss. You want me to help with your trunk?" "Thank you, but I can manage," Penelope said quietly, though her trunk was heavy and her arms ached from the journey. The driver shrugged and deposited her belongings on the dusty street before climbing back onto his wagon and departing without another word. Penelope stood alone in the afternoon heat, watching the few townspeople who bothered to glance her way before continuing about their business. Randsburg was a small town built on gold mining dreams, most of which had faded, leaving behind sun-scorched buildings and hard-bitten people trying to scratch out livings from the unforgiving desert. The boarding house door opened, and a thin woman with graying hair and sharp features emerged. Aunt Martha looked nothing like Penelope's refined mother. Years of desert life had weathered her skin and hardened her expression. "So you are here," Martha said, no warmth in her voice. "Your father's letter was quite clear about your situation. You will not find sympathy from me, girl. I run a respectable establishment, and I expect hard work from everyone under my roof. You will share a room in the attic with my kitchen girl, rise at 4 each morning to help with breakfast, clean rooms, wash linens, and whatever else needs doing. Your education and fancy manners mean nothing here. Do you understand?" "Yes, Aunt Martha," Penelope replied, keeping her voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing on her. "Bring your trunk. I will show you where you sleep." The attic room was stifling, with a sloped ceiling, 2 narrow cots, and a single small window that offered little ventilation. Penelope's roommate, a Mexican girl named Rosa who could not have been more than 16, gave her a sympathetic look, but said nothing as she rushed past, carrying an armful of dirty linens. That first night, Penelope lay awake on the thin mattress, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the boarding house settling, the distant laughter from the saloon down the street, and Rosa's soft breathing. She refused to cry. She had spoken her mind in Boston, stood by her principles, and she would not regret that now. If this was punishment, she would endure it with dignity. The next morning came brutally early. Rosa shook her shoulder in the darkness, whispering, "Time to wake. Mrs. Martha, she gets very angry if we are late." Penelope dragged herself from bed, her body protesting every movement. She dressed in the plain work dress Aunt Martha had provided, so different from the fashionable gowns she had worn in Boston, and followed Rosa down the narrow stairs to the kitchen. The work was relentless. Penelope had never prepared food for 20 men, never scrubbed floors on her hands and knees, never hauled heavy buckets of water from the pump in the yard. Her hands, once soft and carefully tended, quickly became raw and blistered. Aunt Martha watched her struggle with undisguised satisfaction, offering no guidance, only criticism when tasks were performed too slowly or imperfectly. The boarding house residents were mostly miners, rough men who worked hard and expected hot meals and clean rooms for their money. Most ignored Penelope entirely, though a few made comments that brought heat to her cheeks. She learned to keep her eyes down and move quickly through the dining room, serving food and clearing dishes without engaging in conversation. It was on her 5th day in Randsburg that she first encountered Nathan Ward. She was in the yard behind the boarding house, struggling with a heavy load of wet sheets she needed to hang on the clothesline. The morning sun was already fierce, and her arms trembled with fatigue. She had been up since 4, had served breakfast to 18 men, cleaned 6 rooms, and now faced this mountain of laundry with Rosa nowhere in sight, sent to the general store by Aunt Martha. Those look heavy. Penelope turned to find a tall man watching her from the gate that separated the boarding house yard from the adjacent property. He was perhaps 28 or 30, with sun-bronzed skin, dark hair that needed cutting, and gray eyes that held something she had not seen much of in Randsburg: kindness. He wore work clothes, dusty chaps, and a worn hat that marked him as a ranch hand or cowboy. "I can manage, thank you," she said automatically, though her arms shook as she tried to lift the basket. "I do not doubt that you could eventually, but why struggle when I am standing right here?" He opened the gate and walked into the yard without waiting for permission. Before she could protest, he lifted the heavy basket with ease and carried it to the clothesline. "I am Nathan Ward. I rent the room at the end of the hall upstairs. Just moved in 2 days ago, so I have not had the pleasure of properly meeting everyone yet." "Penelope Andrews," she replied, surprised by his straightforward manner. Most of the men in the boarding house either ignored the help or treated them as beneath notice. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Andrews." He set the basket down and tipped his hat to her. "You are new here too, I think." "I have a good memory for faces." "Yes, I arrived less than a week ago. From back east, if I am guessing by your accent, Boston, long way from home." His expression shifted slightly, as if he understood there was a story behind her presence in this dusty town. "Well, if you need help with anything else, my room is number 12. I work at the Thompson Ranch just outside town, but I am around most evenings." "That is kind of you, but I am expected to manage my duties on my own." Nathan glanced toward the boarding house, where Aunt Martha's sharp profile was visible in the kitchen window. "I see. Well, the offer stands regardless." He tipped his hat again and headed back toward the gate, then paused. "For what it is worth, Miss Andrews, you do not look like someone who belongs scrubbing floors. But I have learned that we all end up where we need to be, one way or another." He left before she could formulate a response, and Penelope found herself staring after him, puzzled by the encounter. In her experience, men either wanted something from women or dismissed them entirely. Nathan Ward had offered help with no apparent expectation of return, and his eyes had held respect rather than appraisal or dismissal. She shook her head and returned to hanging sheets, but the small kindness lingered in her mind throughout the long day. Over the following weeks, Penelope settled into the brutal routine of boarding house work, though her body ached constantly, and her hands became increasingly damaged despite the salve Rosa secretly shared with her. Aunt Martha seemed determined to find fault with everything Penelope did, assigning her the worst tasks and criticizing her publicly in front of the other boarders. Nathan Ward, however, began to appear at opportune moments. When she struggled with a stuck pump handle, he materialized to fix it. When she carried heavy trays to the dining room, he somehow always held the door. These small interventions were done so casually that Aunt Martha could not object without seeming unreasonable. Yet they made Penelope's days marginally more bearable. It was 3 weeks after her arrival when Nathan finally spoke to her beyond pleasantries. She was sitting on the back steps late one evening, after all her work was finally done, trying to soothe her blistered hands in a bowl of cool water. She had not heard him approach until his boots appeared on the step below her. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "It is a free country," she replied, then winced at her own curtness. "I apologize. That was rude. Yes, please sit." Nathan settled onto the step, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a moment he said nothing, just gazed out at the darkening desert landscape. Finally, he spoke. "I have been watching how your aunt treats you." Penelope stiffened. "I do not need pity. Good, because I am not offering any." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "Pity is useless. I am offering observation. She is punishing you for something. The question is what and whether you deserve it. What makes you think I would tell you my story? Nothing. I am just saying that if you want to talk, I will listen. No judgment." Penelope studied him in the fading light. There was something solid about Nathan Ward, something trustworthy. Perhaps it was the exhaustion, or the loneliness, or simply the relief of someone treating her like a person rather than an object to be punished or pitied. But she found herself speaking. "My father sent me here as punishment for refusing to marry the men he selected for me. He believes I am too proud, too independent, too opinionated for a woman. My aunt is under instructions to humble me through hard labor until I am ready to return to Boston and accept whatever match he arranges." Nathan absorbed this information quietly. "And are you too proud and independent?" "I do not think wanting to choose my own husband makes me proud. I think it makes me sensible. The last man my father selected publicly humiliated a servant for dropping a glass. The one before that kept a mistress even while courting me. The first had such a violent temper that I saw him strike his own mother. But according to my father, these are acceptable flaws in men of good family and fortune, while my refusal to overlook them is an unforgivable defect in my character." "Your father sounds like a fool." The blunt statement surprised a laugh from Penelope, the first genuine laugh she had released since arriving in Randsburg. Most people would say a wealthy shipping magnate from Boston is the opposite of a fool. Wealth and wisdom are not the same thing. Any man who would send a daughter to be broken rather than listening to her concerns is a fool in my book. Nathan pulled out a small tin from his pocket and opened it. "Here. This is better than whatever you are using. My mother made it. Works wonders on rope burns and blisters." Penelope accepted the tin carefully, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "Thank you. But why are you being kind to me? You do not know me." "I know enough. I know you work harder than anyone in this place. I know you keep your head high even when your aunt tears you down. I know you helped Rosa yesterday when she burned herself on the stove, even though you were already behind on your own tasks. That tells me plenty about your character." He stood up, dusting off his pants. "Also, I have a contrary nature. When people tell me someone deserves punishment, I tend to look for ways to prove them wrong. Seems to me what they meant for harm could turn into something good if we have anything to say about it." "We," Penelope repeated. "I am in the position to help if you are willing to accept it." "Nothing improper," he added quickly. "I have an opportunity that might interest you, but I need to think through the details. Can we talk tomorrow evening?" Curiosity warred with caution in Penelope's mind. I suppose we could. Good. Sleep well, Miss Andrews. He disappeared into the boarding house, leaving Penelope alone with her thoughts and the tin of salve. She applied it to her hands carefully, surprised by how soothing it felt. Whatever Nathan Ward was planning, she found herself hoping it would indeed turn her punishment into opportunity. The next evening, as promised, Nathan found her after dinner service was complete. This time, he gestured for her to follow him away from the boarding house, to a small bench near the town's modest church, where they could speak without being overheard. "I have been thinking about your situation," he began without preamble. "You need to get out from under your aunt's control, and I have a problem that you might be the solution to." "What sort of problem?" "I recently inherited my uncle's ranch about 15 miles outside of Randsburg. It is a small operation, maybe 200 acres of grazing land, a decent house, and enough water to make it work. Problem is, I am trying to expand the cattle herd, which means I need to be out on the range most days. The house is falling apart from neglect, the accounts are a mess, and I could use someone to help manage the domestic side of things while I handle the livestock and land." Penelope frowned. "You want to hire me as a housekeeper? I want to offer you a proposition. A business arrangement that benefits us both." Nathan turned to face her directly. "Marry me. Not a real marriage, not at first anyway. A practical arrangement. You would have a home, protection, and freedom from your aunt and father. I would have help with the ranch and a respectable household. We could draw up an agreement that either of us could end the arrangement if it is not working. After a suitable time, we could divorce quietly, or you could stay on as hired help if you prefer. The point is, you would have options rather than being trapped here." Penelope stared at him, shocked by the audacity of the proposal. "You are suggesting we enter into a false marriage. I am suggesting we enter into an honest partnership disguised as a marriage. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but think about it practically. Your father sent you here to break you, to force you into accepting his will. The only way to truly escape that is to remove yourself from his control entirely. A married woman has more rights than an unmarried daughter. As my wife, he could not force you to return to Boston, could not dictate your future. You would be free. But marriage is not something to be undertaken lightly, even a false one. I agree. Which is why I am being completely honest about what I am offering. I am not asking for a real wife, not expecting anything beyond practical partnership. Separate rooms, mutual respect, shared responsibilities. You would have time to figure out what you want from life without your father or aunt controlling you. And if you decided you wanted to leave eventually, we would arrange it. But at least you would be choosing, not being forced." Penelope's mind raced through the implications. It was scandalous, certainly. It was also the first real opportunity she had been offered since arriving in Randsburg. "Why would you do this? What do you really gain?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "My uncle raised me after my parents died. He was a hard man, but fair. He left me the ranch because he knew I would care for it properly, but I cannot do it alone, not and make it truly prosper. I also know what it is like to be controlled by others, to have your future dictated by people who think they know better. When I turned 21 and inherited a small amount from my parents, my uncle's associates tried to cheat me out of it, said I was too young to manage money, tried to put it all under their control. I had to fight in court for 2 years to get what was rightfully mine. So when I see someone else being controlled and punished for wanting autonomy, I understand that fight. Maybe I am interfering where I should not, but I figure if I can help, why would I not?" His words rang with sincerity, and Penelope found herself wanting to believe him. "This is an enormous decision." "It is. Take time to think about it, but not too long. Your aunt mentioned yesterday that she is writing to your father about your progress, and I have a feeling that letter will not be favorable. If he decides to take further action or arrange a marriage in absentia, your options will narrow considerably. The thought of her father arranging a marriage without her even present sent ice through Penelope's veins. In some states, with the right legal maneuvering, such things were possible. How much time do I have? The mail coach leaves day after tomorrow. I would guess she will send the letter then. If you agree to my proposal, we could be married tomorrow afternoon by the minister, and by the time your aunt's letter reaches Boston, you will already be a married woman beyond your father's control. Tomorrow, Penelope's breath caught. I know it is fast. But sometimes opportunities require quick action. Nathan stood, giving her space. I will be at the church tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. If you decide to come, I will be waiting. If not, I will understand, and I will still help you however I can from the boarding house. Either way, Miss Andrews, I hope you choose your own path forward, whatever that looks like. He left her sitting on the bench, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities and fears. Marriage to a man she barely knew was terrifying. Remaining under her aunt's cruel control and eventually being forced back to Boston was worse. And there was something about Nathan Ward that called to something deep in her spirit. He treated her with respect, offered freedom rather than control, and asked for partnership rather than submission. That night, she barely slept. Rosa noticed her restlessness but said nothing, respecting Penelope's need for silence. By morning, Penelope had made her decision. She worked through her morning duties as usual, giving no indication of her plans. At noon, while Aunt Martha was occupied with receiving a delivery from the general store, Penelope slipped upstairs to the tiny room she shared with Rosa. She had few possessions, and those that mattered fit into a single carpet bag her mother had given her before she left Boston. The bag felt heavy with memories as she packed her few dresses, her mother's Bible, and a small daguerreotype of her younger brother. "You are leaving," Rosa said softly from the doorway. Penelope turned, startled. "I did not hear you come up. Where will you go?" "If you run away, they will find you." "I am not running away, I am getting married." Rosa's eyes widened. "To Mr. Ward, you knew. I see how he looks at you, how he helps. He is a good man, I think. Better than most here." Rosa moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You are lucky. I hope you will be happy." "Thank you, Rosa. I wish I could take you with me, away from here. My family is in Randsburg. I am all right, but you do not belong in this place doing this work. Go, be free." She hugged Penelope quickly, then slipped back out of the room before emotions could overwhelm them both. At 1:45, Penelope descended the stairs with her carpet bag. Aunt Martha was in the parlor, reviewing her accounts. She looked up as Penelope entered. "Where do you think you are going with that bag?" "I am leaving, Aunt Martha. I am getting married this afternoon." Her aunt's face flushed with fury. "Married? To whom? You have no permission. Your father would never. I am 22 years old. I do not need my father's permission. I am marrying Nathan Ward, one of your boarders. We will be living at his ranch outside of town." "You ungrateful girl. After all I have done for you, providing you room and board, you provided me with an attic room and endless labor, which I performed to your specifications. I owe you nothing beyond what I have already given." Penelope kept her voice steady, though her heart hammered. "Good day, Aunt Martha. I will send for my trunk when I am settled." She walked out before her aunt could respond, half expecting to be physically restrained. But Aunt Martha, for all her cruelty, was too aware of appearances to make a public scene. Penelope walked down the dusty main street toward the church, her carpet bag growing heavier with each step. Nathan was waiting on the church steps, dressed in what were clearly his best clothes, clean trousers, a pressed shirt, and a vest that looked new. When he saw her approaching, his face broke into a smile of genuine relief. "You came." "I did. Are you certain you want to do this?" "I am certain." "Are you?" Penelope took a deep breath, then nodded. "Yes, I am choosing my own path, as you said." "Then let's go make it official." The minister, Reverend Thomas, was an elderly man who had married countless couples during Randsburg's boom years. He asked few questions, accepting Nathan's explanation that they were both of age and entering the marriage freely. The ceremony was brief, conducted in the small sanctuary with the Reverend's wife as witness. When Nathan placed a simple gold band on Penelope's finger, she noticed his hands were steady while hers trembled. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Nathan leaned in carefully, giving Penelope time to pull away if she wished. She did not. His lips brushed hers gently, a kiss of promise rather than passion, and then it was done. She was Penelope Ward, married woman, free from her father's control. They signed the marriage certificate, the Reverend's wife congratulating them warmly and pressing a small bouquet of wildflowers into Penelope's hands. Outside the church, Nathan's wagon waited, a sturdy vehicle pulled by 2 horses. "I brought the wagon to town this morning in anticipation," Nathan explained, helping her up onto the bench seat. "I hope that was not presumptuous. It was practical. I appreciate it." They rode out of Randsburg in the late afternoon sun, heading northeast into rolling hills dotted with Joshua trees and sparse vegetation. Nathan kept up a steady conversation, pointing out landmarks and explaining the ranch's layout. His ease with silence and speech both was comforting, never pressing her to respond but clearly wanting her to feel included. The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, a sprawling single-story house that had clearly seen better days, a barn in decent repair, several outbuildings and corrals holding perhaps 24 cattle and several horses. The land stretched out in all directions, brown and dusty but with a stark beauty that caught Penelope's breath. "It is not much yet," Nathan said, perhaps misinterpreting her silence as disappointment. "But it has good bones. The house needs work, but it is structurally sound. There is a reliable well, and the grazing land can support a much larger herd than what's here now. My uncle let things run down in his final years, but I have been working to build it back up." "It is beautiful," Penelope said honestly. "I was not expecting beautiful, but it is." Nathan glanced at her, surprise and pleasure crossing his features. "I think so too. Come on, let me show you inside." The house was indeed in need of attention. Dust covered everything, furniture was scarce and worn, and clear evidence of bachelor living was everywhere. But the structure was solid, the room spacious, and the potential evident. Nathan led her through the main room that served as kitchen and dining area, past a small parlor and down a hall to 2 bedrooms. "This was my uncle's room. I have been sleeping here, but I will move my things to the smaller room. You should have the larger one, and it has the better window for cross breeze in the summer heat." He set her carpetbag down carefully. "There are clean sheets in the chest there. I will give you privacy to settle in." "Nathan, wait." Penelope turned to face him. "We should establish some rules for this arrangement. Clear expectations so neither of us feels taken advantage of." "Agreed. What do you propose? You mentioned separate rooms and mutual respect." "I want that in writing, along with the agreement that either party can end this arrangement with 3 months' notice. In return, I will manage the household, handle accounts if you wish, and help with the ranch as I am able." "Fair, more than fair." "I will draft an agreement tomorrow for us both to sign." Nathan paused. "Also, I want you to know if you ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable, you can leave immediately. I will not hold you here against your will." The sincerity in his voice eased something tight in Penelope's chest. "Thank you. And Nathan, I will do my best to be a good partner in this endeavor. You are taking a significant risk trusting me." "So are you trusting me. Seems we are both betting on each other turning out to be decent people. I think those are good odds," he smiled. "I will start dinner. Nothing fancy, I am afraid. My cooking skills are pretty limited. Then perhaps tomorrow I can take over that task if the kitchen is adequately supplied. There is a root cellar with basics, and I usually ride into town weekly for supplies. Make a list of what you need, and we will stock up properly." He left her alone in the room that was now hers. Penelope sank onto the bed, still processing the dramatic turn her life had taken in the span of a single day. This morning she had been her aunt's unpaid servant, trapped and powerless. Now she was a married woman with her own home, such as it was, and a partner who asked rather than demanded. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe that stood against one wall. The room was sparse but clean, and Nathan had clearly made an effort to prepare it. Fresh flowers in a jar on the small table, a clean quilt on the bed, and a rag rug on the floor that looked recently beaten. That evening they ate dinner at the large table in the main room. Simple fare of beans, bread, and coffee, but Nathan had clearly done his best. Conversation flowed more easily than Penelope expected, covering practical matters like the ranch's finances, the cattle market, and needed repairs to various structures. "The biggest challenge is water," Nathan explained. "We have the well here at the house, but to expand the herd, I need to develop more water sources out on the grazing land. There is a canyon about 2 miles north where I think I could build a catchment system for rainwater, but it will take time and labor. Could you hire help?" "Eventually, but right now money is tight. I invested heavily in the current cattle, betting that beef prices will rise. If I am right, we will be in good shape come fall. If I am wrong, it will be a lean winter. Then we will hope you are right and plan carefully either way." Penelope sipped her coffee, surprised to find herself genuinely interested in the ranch's operation. "What about the household accounts? You mentioned they were in disarray." "My uncle kept terrible records. I have boxes of receipts and papers that need sorting, if you have any skill with numbers." "I managed my mother's household accounts for 3 years while she was ill. I think I can handle ranch finances." Relief flooded Nathan's face. "That would be an enormous help. Tomorrow I will show you everything." After dinner, Penelope insisted on cleaning up despite Nathan's protests. She needed something to do with her hands, some normal domestic activity to ground her after the extraordinary day. Nathan settled at the table with papers, reviewing what looked like breeding records for the cattle. When the dishes were clean and put away, Penelope excused herself to her room. She changed into her nightgown, braided her hair, and sat on the bed with her mother's Bible. Before opening it, she allowed herself a moment to simply feel. Exhausted, scared, hopeful, and strangely at peace. She had chosen this path. Whatever came next, it would be on her terms. The following weeks established a rhythm that surprised them both with its comfort. Penelope rose early to prepare breakfast, finding satisfaction in cooking for someone who appreciated the effort. Nathan was unfailingly grateful, never taking her work for granted, always offering to help with dishes or other tasks. During the days, while Nathan worked with the cattle or made repairs around the property, Penelope tackled the chaos of the house. She cleaned systematically, room by room, discovering furniture buried under dust and disorder. She organized the kitchen, making lists of needed supplies. Most importantly, she began sorting through the boxes of ranch records, creating a system to track expenses, income, and debts. What she found concerned her. Nathan's uncle had been in deeper financial trouble than Nathan realized. There were unpaid debts to several suppliers, and the cattle purchase Nathan had made, while sound in theory, had left almost no cash reserves. One evening after dinner, she spread the organized records on the table before him. "Nathan, we need to talk about the finances." He listened carefully as she explained what she had discovered, his expression growing increasingly serious. "I knew things were tight, but I did not realize he owed so much. Can we manage? If beef prices rise as you hope, yes. But we need to be very careful. No unnecessary purchases, and we should plant a kitchen garden immediately to reduce food costs. I also found records showing your uncle had an arrangement with a sheep rancher to the west, allowing them to water their flocks at our North Canyon in exchange for a percentage of wool. That arrangement lapsed, but if you renewed it, that would provide some income." Nathan studied the papers, then looked up at Penelope with something like wonder. "You figured all this out in 2 weeks. It is not complicated mathematics, just organization. Maybe not complicated for you, but I have been staring at these boxes for months without making sense of them. This is." He gestured at the neat ledger she had created. "This is incredibly helpful, thank you." The gratitude in his voice was genuine, and Penelope felt warmth spread through her chest. They were truly partners in this endeavor, each bringing skills the other lacked. As summer deepened into August, they fell into an easy partnership. Nathan taught Penelope to ride, patiently guiding her through the basics on his gentlest horse. She taught him to make decent bread and helped him draft letters to potential buyers for the cattle. They worked together on the kitchen garden, both of them learning as they went from a book on desert farming Penelope found among Nathan's uncle's belongings. The physical attraction that had been present but muted in their arrangement began to grow. Penelope found herself noticing the way Nathan's shirt stretched across his shoulders when he worked, the kindness in his eyes when he listened to her ideas, the gentle strength of his hands. For his part, Nathan seemed increasingly aware of her presence, his gaze lingering when he thought she was not looking. They were scrupulously careful about maintaining the boundaries they had established. Separate rooms, respectful distance, but the tension was building nonetheless. It came to a head on an evening in late August. They had spent the day working together to repair a section of corral fence, a job that required both of them. The work was hot, exhausting, and frustrating when the posts refused to set properly. But when they finally drove the last nail and stepped back to admire their work, both of them filthy and sweating, they looked at each other and started laughing. "We look like we wrestled the fence instead of fixing it," Nathan said, gesturing at their dirt-covered clothes. "I think the fence won," Penelope replied, trying to brush dust from her skirt and only making it worse. Their eyes met, laughter fading into something deeper. Nathan reached out slowly, giving her every chance to step away, and gently brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek. The touch, so simple and careful, sent heat through Penelope's entire body. "Penelope," he said softly, his hand still hovering near her face. "This arrangement we have, this partnership, it has become the best part of my days, not just the help you provide, but you. Your company, your conversation, the way you see possibilities where I see only problems. I know we agreed this was temporary, practical, but I find myself hoping maybe it could become something more, something real." Her heart hammered in her chest. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I have feelings for you. Real feelings. I think I have since that first day in the yard when you tried to lift that basket of sheets rather than ask for help. But I do not want to pressure you or make you feel trapped. If you want to maintain our current arrangement exactly as it is, I will respect that completely." Penelope looked at this man who had offered her freedom when her own family offered only control, who treated her as an equal partner, who made her laugh and challenged her mind, and looked at her like she was something precious. What if I told you I have been feeling the same way? That somewhere in these weeks of working beside you, I started to fall in love with you. Joy transformed Nathan's face. Then I would ask if I could kiss you, really kiss you, not like at the wedding, but like a man kisses the woman he loves. Yes, Penelope whispered. Yes, you may. Nathan pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist as his lips found hers. This kiss was nothing like the chaste brush at their wedding ceremony. This was deep, passionate, a claiming and a surrender all at once. Penelope melted into him, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, returning the kiss with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Penelope Ward, genuinely, truly, with everything I am. I love you too, Nathan. I did not expect this, did not plan for it, but it is the truest thing I have ever felt. So what do we do now? He asked, his thumb tracing circles on her lower back. Now we make this marriage real in every sense. We stop pretending this is just a practical arrangement and acknowledge what it has become. Are you certain? I do not want you to feel rushed. Penelope pulled back just enough to meet his eyes directly. I have never been more certain of anything. You gave me freedom when I needed it most, but what I want now is to choose you, fully, completely, as my true husband. That night, the careful boundaries they had maintained dissolved. Nathan carried Penelope over the threshold of his room, their room now, and they came together with a passion that had been building for weeks. Their lovemaking was tender and fierce by turns, a physical expression of the emotional connection they had built through shared work and mutual respect. Afterward, lying in Nathan's arms with her head on his chest, Penelope marveled at the journey that had brought her here. My father sent me to Randsburg as punishment. He wanted to break me, to force me into submission. Instead, I found you. What they meant for harm became the greatest good I could imagine. Nathan's arms tightened around her. I was thinking something similar. My uncle's death could have left me alone and overwhelmed, barely keeping the ranch going. Instead, it brought me you, the best partner I could have hoped for. We are quite the pair, turning intended curses into blessings. We are at that. Nathan kissed the top of her head. I promise you, Penelope, I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice. I will be the husband you deserve, the partner you need. You already are, she replied softly. You already are. September brought the first hint of cooling temperatures and also brought challenges. The sheep rancher Penelope had mentioned, a gruff man named Douglas who ran his operation with his 2 adult sons, came to renegotiate the water rights. The discussion started cordially, but grew heated when Douglas demanded a larger share of wool than Nathan's uncle had previously accepted. Your uncle was a friend, Douglas insisted. He gave us favorable terms. My uncle was also deep in debt, Nathan replied evenly. I am willing to continue the arrangement, but at fair market rates. 20% of wool is more than generous given that we maintain the catchment system. 15%, and we help with maintaining it. 18, and you have a deal. They shook on it, and Penelope, who had been listening from the house porch, allowed herself to breathe again. Nathan had held firm but fair, exactly the right balance. When Douglas and his sons rode off, Nathan returned to the porch. How did I do? He asked. Perfectly. You got fair terms without making an enemy. That is good business. I learned from watching you negotiate with the general store owner last week. You drove a hard bargain on those supplies. We needed fair prices, and he was trying to take advantage. Nathan grinned. You terrified him a little, I think. In the best way. Their partnership extended beyond the personal to the practical in ways that strengthened both. Penelope's business sense and Nathan's knowledge of ranching combined to make the operation increasingly efficient. By October, when they sold a portion of the cattle herd, the prices had indeed risen as Nathan predicted. The profit was enough to pay off the outstanding debts and leave them with a comfortable cushion. "We did it," Nathan said, looking at the bank receipt with something like disbelief. "We actually stabilized the ranch finances." "We did it together," Penelope corrected. "Your knowledge of cattle and timing, my organization of the accounts, neither of us could have done it alone." That night, they celebrated with a dinner that was as fancy as their limited resources allowed. Chicken instead of beans, fresh bread with butter, and even a small cake Penelope had managed to make from hoarded sugar. They ate by lamplight, talking and laughing, and Penelope felt a contentment she had never known in her father's grand Boston house. "I should write to my mother," she said during a quiet moment. "Let her know I am well and happily married. She will worry. What will you tell her about how we met?" Penelope considered. "The truth, mostly. That I was sent to Aunt Martha's as punishment, that I met you, that we married quickly, but it was my choice. She will understand. She never agreed with Father's methods, though she could not openly oppose him. Will she tell your father? Probably. But there is nothing he can do now. I am legally married and by all accounts happy. His power over me is broken." The freedom in those words still felt new and precious. "You could invite her to visit if you wanted. I know the house is not fancy, but, Nathan, the house is perfect." "You are perfect. If my mother visits, she will see that immediately." Penelope reached across the table to take his hand. "Besides, we have made this place into a home. That is worth more than all the fancy furnishings in Boston." Winter in the California desert was nothing like the Boston winters Penelope remembered, but it brought its own challenges. Cold nights, occasional rain that turned the roads to mud, and the constant work of keeping livestock fed and watered. Nathan and Penelope worked side by side through it all, their partnership deepening with every shared challenge. In December, a letter arrived from Penelope's mother. Nathan rode into Randsburg to collect the mail and returned to find Penelope anxious and eager. She tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The letter was long, written in her mother's careful script. She expressed relief that Penelope was safe and well, admitted that she had been terrified by Cyrus's decision to send her to Martha's care. She wrote that she had told Cyrus about the marriage, and his reaction had been predictably furious, but that he could do nothing about it legally. Most importantly, she wrote that she wanted to visit in the spring if Penelope would welcome her. "She wants to come," Penelope said, tears streaming down her face. "My mother wants to visit." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her as emotion overwhelmed her. "Then we will prepare a proper welcome for her. She will see how happy you are, how good our life is here. She will have no doubts that you made the right choice." "I have no doubts," Penelope said fiercely. "Not a single one." As winter gave way to spring, they prepared for Mrs. Andrews's visit. They painted the house exterior, purchased new curtains for the main rooms from a seamstress in town, and even bought a proper bed for the guest room. The expense was justified, they agreed, for Penelope's peace of mind. The ranch itself was thriving. The cattle herd had grown, new calves born healthy and strong. The kitchen garden was producing well, supplemented now by fruit trees Nathan had planted. They had even hired occasional help. A young man named Sam from town who wanted to learn ranching and was willing to work for low wages in exchange for education. Penelope had changed too, transformed from the exhausted, beaten-down young woman who had arrived in Randsburg to someone bronzed by sun, strengthened by work, and radiating contentment. She dressed practically now, in simple clothes suited to ranch work, her hands calloused but capable. She felt more herself than she ever had in Boston's drawing rooms. When the day came for her mother's arrival, Penelope was nearly sick with anticipation. She had not seen Elizabeth Andrews in almost a year, and so much had changed. Nathan drove them both into Randsburg to meet the stagecoach, keeping up a steady stream of calming conversation to ease Penelope's nerves. When the coach pulled up, and her mother descended, Penelope could not stop the sob that escaped her. Elizabeth was thinner than she remembered, with more gray in her hair, but her face lit up with joy at the sight of her daughter. "Penelope," she rushed forward, and they met in a fierce embrace, both crying. "Mama, I have missed you so much. Let me look at you." Elizabeth pulled back, studying her daughter's face. "You look wonderful, healthy and happy and so alive. I was so worried, but I can see now there was no need." "Mama, this is my husband, Nathan Ward." Nathan stepped forward, removing his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Andrews, it is an honor to meet you. Penelope speaks of you often." Elizabeth studied him with the sharp eyes of a mother evaluating the man who claimed her daughter's heart. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she smiled. "The honor is mine, Mr. Ward. Thank you for taking such good care of my daughter." "She has taken equally good care of me, madam. We are partners in every sense." The drive back to the ranch gave Elizabeth a chance to see the landscape and hear about their life. Penelope talked almost non-stop, months of stored conversation pouring out. Nathan interjected occasionally with anecdotes that made both women laugh. When they arrived at the ranch, Elizabeth stood taking it all in. The house with its fresh paint, the well-maintained corrals, the garden flourishing despite the heat. "This is your home," she said softly. "Yes, Mama, this is home." Over the next week, Elizabeth saw firsthand how Penelope and Nathan lived. She watched them work together, the easy communication of a couple who knew each other's rhythms. She saw Nathan's respect for Penelope's opinions and Penelope's open affection for her husband. She helped in the kitchen, walked the property, and spent long evenings talking with her daughter after Nathan had tactfully excused himself to give them privacy. "He is a good man," Elizabeth said one night as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Your father would never admit it, but you chose far better than he ever could have done for you." "I know, Mama. I am so happy here. I did not know marriage could be like this, built on respect and partnership rather than control. Your father and we started with some affection, but over the years he became more concerned with position and control than with family. I have regretted that I could not stand up to him more, especially regarding you." Elizabeth reached for Penelope's hand. "I am proud of you. You had the courage I lacked to choose your own path. You gave me the foundation to have that courage. Every kind word, every time you validated my thoughts and feelings, you were building my strength. I would not be here without you." They embraced, a moment of understanding passing between them that needed no words. When it came time for Elizabeth to return to Boston, the farewell was bittersweet but not desperate. They had rebuilt their connection, and both knew they would find ways to maintain it despite the distance. "Write to me often," Elizabeth insisted. "Tell me everything, especially when the babies come." Penelope blushed. "Mama, we have not even been married a year. But you will have children. I can see it in how you look at each other. And I want to know my grandchildren, even if it is only through letters." Elizabeth turned to Nathan. "Take care of her and let her take care of you. You have something special, something rare. Treasure it. Every day, Mrs. Andrews, I promise you that." After Elizabeth's departure, the ranch seemed quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet. Spring turned to summer, and with it came news that Penelope was indeed expecting a child. Nathan's joy was almost comical in its intensity, alternating between fierce protectiveness and paralyzing fear that he would somehow fail as a father. "You will be wonderful," Penelope assured him repeatedly. "You are kind, patient, and loving. Those are the qualities that matter." "But I know nothing about babies." "Neither do I, really. We will learn together, just like we have learned everything else." As her pregnancy progressed, Nathan became even more attentive, taking on more of the physical labor around the ranch and insisting she rest. Penelope, feeling healthy and strong, chafed at the restrictions but appreciated the concern behind them. In October, a letter arrived from Boston that brought mixed news. Cyrus Andrews had suffered an apoplexy, a stroke that had left him partially paralyzed and unable to speak clearly. He was alive but would require extensive care. Elizabeth wrote that she was managing, but the tone suggested she was overwhelmed. "I should go to her," Penelope said, staring at the letter. "She needs help. You are 7 months pregnant. The journey would be dangerous." "I know, but she is my mother and she is alone dealing with him." Nathan thought for a moment. What if we invited her here instead? To stay through the birth and recovery, perhaps longer if she wishes. You need her, and it sounds like she could use a respite from Boston. It was a perfect solution. They sent the invitation immediately, and within a month, Elizabeth Andrews had arranged care for her husband and made the journey west. Her relief at escaping, even temporarily, was palpable. "I should feel guilty," she admitted to Penelope and Nathan one evening. "He is my husband and he is ill, but all I feel is relief to be away from his anger and controlling nature, even if he can barely express it now." "You have earned a respite," Nathan said gently. "You have cared for him for decades. Taking time for yourself is not wrong." Elizabeth settled into the guest room and into their lives with surprising ease. She helped prepare for the baby, sewing tiny clothes and knitting blankets. She cooked meals when Penelope was too tired and kept Nathan calm as the birth approached. When Penelope went into labor on a cold November night, Elizabeth and Nathan were both there to support her. The birth was long and difficult, but when dawn broke, a healthy baby boy entered the world with a lusty cry that announced his arrival to anyone within hearing distance. "A son," Nathan whispered, holding the tiny bundle with reverent care. "We have a son." "What will you name him?" Elizabeth asked, tears streaming down her face. Penelope and Nathan looked at each other. They had discussed names but had not made a final decision. "Noah," Penelope said suddenly. "Noah Ward. A new beginning, like the flood receding and new life beginning." "Noah," Nathan repeated, testing the name. "It is perfect." Those first weeks with Noah were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Elizabeth's presence was invaluable. Her experience guiding the new parents through the chaos of caring for an infant. Nathan proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor at night when Noah fussed, changing diapers without complaint, and staring at his son with naked adoration that made Penelope's heart swell. "You are a natural," she told him one night as she watched him rock Noah to sleep. "I am terrified every moment that I am doing something wrong." "That probably makes you a good father. Only bad parents think they know everything." Elizabeth stayed through the winter, helping as Penelope recovered and found her rhythm as a mother. In spring, as Noah grew stronger and more alert, Elizabeth announced her intention to return to Boston. "Your father needs me, and I have been away long enough, but I will return if you will have me. Perhaps next winter. Always, Mama. This is your home too whenever you want it to be." Before Elizabeth left, she pulled Nathan aside for a private conversation. "I misjudged you when Penelope first wrote of your marriage. I thought perhaps you had taken advantage of her vulnerable situation. I was wrong. You have given my daughter the life she deserved, the partnership she needed." You have my deepest gratitude and respect." "She has given me just as much, Mrs. Andrews. More, maybe. I was alone and overwhelmed, and she brought order and purpose and love into my life. I am the fortunate one. You are both fortunate because you recognize what you have and value it. That is the secret to a lasting marriage that I learned too late. Do not make my mistakes. Keep choosing each other every day." "I will. I promise you that." The years that followed were full of the ordinary magic of a life well lived. The ranch continued to prosper. Nathan's careful management and Penelope's business acumen combining to slowly expand their operation. They added more cattle, acquired additional land, and eventually built a second house on the property for the foreman they hired as the operation grew too large for one family to manage alone. Noah grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses and following his father around the ranch. When he was 3, Penelope gave birth to a daughter they named Nora, a quiet baby who watched everything with serious dark eyes. 2 years later, twin boys arrived, surprising everyone and doubling the chaos in the household overnight. Through it all, Penelope and Nathan maintained the partnership that had been the foundation of their marriage from the start. They made decisions together, supported each other's dreams, and never let the challenges of ranching and raising children erode the love between them. Elizabeth visited every winter, her presence a joyful constant in the children's lives. She wrote that Cyrus had passed away peacefully in his sleep 4 years after his stroke, and while she mourned, there was also a sense of release. She began spending half the year in California, truly becoming part of their family. One evening, when Noah was 10 and the youngest children were 5, Nathan and Penelope sat on the porch watching the sunset as they had done countless times before. The children were finally in bed after the usual battle, and the house was quiet. "Do you ever think about that day in Randsburg when I proposed?" Nathan asked. "Wonder what would have happened if you had not come to the church?" "Sometimes," Penelope admitted, "but not with regret. Maybe with curiosity, but the choice I made led me here to this life, to you and our children and this place. I would not trade it for anything. Your aunt meant to break you. Your father meant to punish you. Instead, they gave you the chance to find real freedom and real love. What they meant for harm, we turned to good." Penelope quoted the phrase Nathan had used so long ago. "We took their punishment and made it opportunity. Best opportunity of my life." Nathan reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with the easy comfort of years together. "I love you," Penelope warred. "More now than even on that day I first told you, and I thought it was impossible to love anyone more than I loved you then. I love you too. Always have, always will." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky deepened to purple and stars began to emerge. Inside the house, the sounds of their children sleeping peacefully drifted through the open windows. The ranch spread around them, a testament to their hard work and partnership. Noah came to the door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Papa, I had a bad dream." Nathan rose immediately. "Come here, son. Let's get you settled again." Penelope watched her husband scoop their oldest child into his arms and carry him back to bed, murmuring comfort. She thought about the girl she had been, stepping off that wagon in Randsburg with nothing but anger and fear. She thought about the man who had seen her struggle and offered not pity but partnership. Their marriage had started as a transaction, a practical arrangement to benefit them both. But it had become something far greater, a true union of minds and hearts and purposes. They had built not just a ranch but a family, not just a business but a legacy of love and mutual respect. When Nathan returned, he pulled her to her feet and into his arms, swaying gently to music only they could hear. "Dance with me," he murmured. "There is no music. There is always music when I am holding you." Penelope laughed and allowed herself to be led in a slow dance on the porch under the stars. This was her life now. Simple, beautiful, hard-won, and deeply satisfying. This was the opportunity she had claimed when others tried to punish her. This was the good they had made from intended harm, and she would not change a single moment of it. Years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and family. Noah proved to have his father's gift with horses and his mother's head for business. By the time he was 16, he was handling much of the day-to-day ranch operations, freeing Nathan to focus on expansion and breeding programs. Nora, quieter than her boisterous brothers, showed an unexpected talent for healing. When one of the ranch hands broke his arm, she assisted the doctor with such calm competence that he suggested she consider medical training. It was an unusual path for a young woman, but Nathan and Penelope had never believed in limiting their children based on conventional expectations. "If you want to study medicine, we will find a way," Penelope told her daughter. "Women are becoming doctors now. It will not be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is." The twins, Nathan Jr. and Nicholas, were inseparable troublemakers who kept everyone on their toes but also brought endless laughter to the household. Elizabeth continued her pattern of spending winters with them, and as the children grew, they came to see her not just as a grandmother but as a friend and confidante. She told them stories of Boston, of their mother's courage in choosing her own path, of the importance of standing up for what you believed in. "Your mother was sent here as punishment," she told them one evening as they all gathered in the main room. "Her father, my husband, thought he could break her spirit by sending her to work as little more than a servant. Instead, she found your father, built this ranch, and created a life more fulfilling than anything she could have had in Boston society. Remember that when people try to tell you what you can and cannot do, sometimes the paths others see as punishment lead to the greatest blessings." When Penelope was 45 and Nathan 48, they decided to step back from the daily ranch operations, turning most of the responsibility over to Noah, who had married a capable young woman from a neighboring ranch. They kept a hand in decision-making but focused more on enjoying their grandchildren, the first of whom had arrived 2 years earlier. One afternoon, riding out to their favorite spot on the ranch, a high point with views stretching for miles, they paused to rest the horses and take in the vista. "Do you remember what you said that first day you showed me the ranch?" Penelope asked. "You said it had good bones and potential." "I remember. I also remember thinking it was presumptuous to assume you would see what I saw. I saw it. Maybe not immediately, but I saw it. And look what we built, Nathan. Look at what we made together." The ranch spread below them, prosperous and thriving. The house had been expanded over the years, barns and outbuildings in good repair, cattle grazing peacefully, horses running in the paddocks. But more than the physical structures, they had built a family bound by love and respect, had created a legacy that would extend beyond their own lives. "We did well," Nathan agreed. "But the ranch, successful as it is, that is not what I am most proud of. No. I am most proud of the family we created, the children we raised to be good, capable people. I am proud of the marriage we built, starting from such unusual circumstances. I am proud that we kept choosing each other every single day for all these years." Penelope leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders naturally. "I chose well that day in Randsburg when I walked to the church. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Nathan corrected. "What was the first?" "Standing up to your father in the first place. Refusing to let him dictate your life. If you had been obedient and married one of his choices, you never would have been sent west, and I never would have found you. Your courage before you even met me made everything else possible." Tears pricked Penelope's eyes. After all these years, Nathan still had the ability to say exactly what she needed to hear, to see her truly and completely. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert landscape in shades of gold and amber. Two people who had started as strangers in a marriage of convenience, who had become partners, and then lovers, and then everything to each other. Eventually, they rode back to the house, where their children and grandchildren were gathering for dinner. It had become a weekly tradition, the whole family coming together to share a meal and their lives. The house, once so quiet when only Nathan lived there, now rang with voices and laughter. That night, after everyone had left and they prepared for bed, Nathan pulled Penelope close. "I thank God every day that your father was such a stubborn fool. If he had listened to you, you would have been happy in Boston, and I would have struggled along here alone. His punishment became my salvation." "Our salvation," Penelope corrected. "I saved you from loneliness, but you saved me from a life without love or freedom. We saved each other." "What they meant for harm," Nathan began, "we turned to good," Penelope finished. It had become their private motto over the years, a reminder of where they started and what they had built together. They spoke it often, teaching it to their children as a lesson about resilience and opportunity, and the unexpected ways life could surprise you. When Penelope was 52, a letter arrived from Boston that she had been half expecting for years. It was from her brother, writing to inform her that their mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep while visiting relatives in New York. She had been 73, had lived a full life, and had expressed contentment in her final years. The grief was sharp but not unbearable. Elizabeth had been a constant presence in their lives, had known and loved her grandchildren, had seen the happiness Penelope and Nathan had built together. She had died knowing her daughter was well loved and fulfilled. At the funeral, which the whole family traveled to Boston to attend, Penelope's brother pulled her aside. "Mother talked about you often, especially in her last years. She said you were the bravest of all of us, the only one who dared to defy father and choose your own path. She was proud of you." "I learned from her," Penelope replied. "She could not openly defy him, but she taught me to think independently, to value myself. That gave me the foundation to stand up when it mattered." After the funeral, Nathan asked if she wanted to stay in Boston for a while, perhaps visit old friends or see the sights she had known as a girl. Penelope shook her head. "This is not my home anymore. It has not been for many years. I want to go back to California, to our ranch, to our family. That is where I belong." They returned to Randsburg within the week, and Penelope felt the tension leave her shoulders as familiar landscape came into view. Boston held memories, some good, but California held her life, her love, her purpose. The years continued to pass, each bringing its own joys and challenges. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, celebrated births and mourned deaths, saw their children grow and have children of their own. Through it all, Nathan and Penelope remained each other's constant, the partnership they had forged in those early days only strengthening with time. When Nathan was 65, a fall from a horse left him with a badly broken leg that never quite healed correctly. He walked with a pronounced limp afterward, and could no longer do the hard physical labor that had defined his days. Some men might have seen this as a tragedy, the end of their useful life. Nathan simply adjusted, focusing more on the business and breeding aspects of ranching, teaching his grandsons everything he knew. "I can still contribute," he told Penelope when she found him frustrated one evening. "Just differently than before." "You have always contributed far more than physical labor," she reminded him. "Your knowledge, your judgment, your love for this place and this family, those have not diminished, Penelope herself faced her own aging with typical practicality. Her hair turned silver, her hands became gnarled with arthritis, her back protested long days of activity. She adapted, finding new ways to be useful, new projects to engage her still sharp mind. She wrote letters to her children and grandchildren, dispensing advice and love in equal measure. She managed the household accounts with the same precision she had brought to them 40 years earlier. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration that brought together friends and family from across California. The party was held at the ranch, with long tables set up outside, food enough to feed an army, and music that kept everyone dancing late into the night. Noah stood to give a toast. His own children gathered around him. My parents' marriage began unusually, as many of you know. It started as a practical arrangement, but it became something far greater. They taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice, one you make every day. They showed us that true partnership means supporting each other's strengths and compensating for each other's weaknesses. They proved that respect and affection can grow into a love that lasts a lifetime. To Nathan and Penelope Ward, the best example of marriage any of us could hope to have. To Nathan and Penelope, the crowd echoed, raising glasses. Later, when the party had wound down and most guests had departed, Nathan and Penelope stood together looking out over the ranch by moonlight. 40 years had passed since that hasty wedding in Randsburg's small church. 40 years of building a life together, of challenges faced and overcome, of love deepening and maturing. Any regrets? Nathan asked, echoing a question he had asked many times over the years. Not a single one, Penelope replied, giving the same answer she always did. You. Only that I did not meet you sooner. I would have liked even more years with you. We have had 40 years, and with any luck we will have many more. That is not something to regret. Nathan pulled her close, and they swayed together slowly, as they had done countless times over the decades. Two people who had taken a chance on each other when both needed opportunity, who had chosen to see possibility rather than limitation, who had built something beautiful from what others intended as punishment. They aged together gracefully, supporting each other through the inevitable losses and limitations that came with advancing years. When Nathan's heart began to fail in his 72nd year, Penelope nursed him with tender devotion, refusing to leave his side. He lingered for several months, long enough to see his great-grandchildren, long enough to tell Penelope one more time how much he loved her, long enough to die peacefully in his own bed with his wife holding his hand. Penelope grieved deeply, but not despairingly. They had been given 47 years together, years filled with love and partnership and purpose. She had known him, truly and completely, and been equally known by him. That was a gift many people never received. She lived another 8 years after Nathan's death, remaining active in the ranch's operation and in her children's lives. She became the family matriarch, the one everyone turned to for wisdom and perspective. She told stories of the early days, of the struggling ranch and the partnership that saved it, of choosing love over convention. When her time came, she went peacefully in her sleep at age 73, the same age her mother had been. Her children found her in her bed, looking peaceful, a letter she had been writing to her youngest grandson still on the bedside table. The funeral was held at the ranch, with hundreds attending to pay respects to a woman who had touched many lives. Her children eulogized her with stories that made the crowd laugh and cry, painting a picture of a woman who had been brave enough to choose her own path, strong enough to build a life from nothing, and loving enough to create a family bound by affection rather than mere obligation. Noah, now an elderly man himself, spoke last. My mother was sent to Randsburg as punishment. Her father wanted to break her spirit, teach her obedience. Instead, she found opportunity. She found my father, and together they built all of this. He gestured at the ranch spreading around them. They took what was meant for harm and turned it to good. They taught us that lesson by example every day of their lives. We honor them by living the same way, by seeing opportunity in challenges, by choosing love over fear, by building rather than tearing down. That is their legacy to us. Penelope was buried next to Nathan on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone was simple, bearing their names and dates, and below, carved in the granite, "What they meant for harm, we turned to good." Years passed, then decades, but the story of Nathan and Penelope Ward lived on in family legend, passed down through generations. Their descendants continued to work the ranch, expanding it into one of the most successful operations in California. But more than the business success, they passed down the values Nathan and Penelope had embodied: partnership, respect, the courage to choose your own path, and the wisdom to see opportunity even in punishment. The ranch house, expanded and modernized over the years, still stood on its original foundation. In the main room, now a sort of family museum, hung a photograph taken on that 40th anniversary, showing Nathan and Penelope standing together, gray-haired and weathered by years, but with eyes that still sparkled with love and hands still intertwined. Below the photograph, a small placard told their story in brief, ending with the words that had defined their marriage and their life. What they meant for harm, we turned to good. Love, partnership, and courage transform everything. And in that house, in that family, in the lives touched by their example, Nathan and Penelope's love story lived on, a testament to the power of choosing your own path, seeing opportunity where others see only punishment, and building something beautiful with someone who sees you as an equal partner in all things. Their story had started with a dusty wagon rolling into Randsburg, carrying a young woman sent as punishment. It had become a love story for the ages, proof that the best things in life often come from the most unexpected beginnings, and that true love is not found but built, day by day, choice by choice, through all the years of a life fully lived together.